Hello everyone and welcome back to Keeping Up with the Joneses. So about 2 months ago, just over 2 months ago, myself, my wife, and our now 19-month-old, but he was about 16 and a half, 16 months old then, son, took a trip to Spain. So we live in Canada, we're from the Toronto area, and this was going to be our first trip with him. We're renting a car, driving around, exploring the country. A bit of a different vacation from the last vacation we took last year, which was to Jamaica. So in this trip, we knew we were going to want to rent a car. We were flying from Toronto to Madrid, and we were going to be spending the majority of our trip in Valencia, which is on the eastern coast. Madrid is a little bit more central in the country. Now, I love EVs. I don't own an EV, but I'm fascinated by the technology. I'm fascinated by the fact that you can run this 4,000, 5,000 pound vehicle on just electrons, on just batteries. And so this felt like the perfect opportunity for us to test an EV and see would it work for our lifestyle. Now, I know it's not exactly how we would kind of live our day-to-day here, but we want to just get a feel for the technology, for charging, and just what it was like. And so when we were planning the trip, I spent a ton of time researching what's the infrastructure like in Spain, what type of vehicles can you get there, do they have NACS charging, do they have CCS charging, all that stuff. And in doing so, I tried to find as many YouTube videos as I can physically showing me what it would be like to actually charge and drive there. And I found very little that I found particularly useful. So on this trip, we decided that we were going to document what we found and help anyone else looking to do the same thing on their trips. Spoiler alert, we did end up renting an electric vehicle. When I initially booked it with the rental company, I booked what I thought was going to be a Tesla Model 3 long range. And from everything I was seeing, superchargers were available. There were no adapters unless I brought my own. So that would be tricky if I had to use CCS. But there were superchargers around, and we would likely be okay if we got a Tesla. When we got to the rental car facility in the airport, lo and behold, there were no Teslas. And we were given a Mercedes EQA 250 Plus. It's kind of a small hatchback. You'll see it in the video when we get to that part of the video here. So we set off out of the airport with about 95%, I believe. And the first day or so, we were just kind of puttering around Madrid, nothing crazy. It wasn't until we actually left Madrid to drive to Valencia that we were going to do our first charging stop. So let me kind of break up the trip for you, and I'm going to show you some clips of me actually at the chargers explaining how things went. But basically, how we planned the trip was the first day we were going to be in Madrid. And then the second day, we're going to leave in the morning and start our trip across the country to Valencia. Again, about 4.5 hours if you drive straight, no stopping. With an 18-month-old, that was never going to be the case. We knew we were going to have to stop, which was perfect. And so what I did was before the trip, and I highly recommend this, I spent a bunch of time learning what were the companies that seemed to be the most reliable, what were the chargers that seemed to be the most reliable. I use a better route planner for the majority of my research, as well as if there were specific companies along the way, I'd pop into their website, download the app, see if there's anything I could learn before we actually got there that would help make the charging situation a little bit easier when we got there. In saying all this, the main gripe people have with EVs versus gas is exactly this. It's the range anxiety. And frankly, it's not really range anxiety as much as it's charging anxiety, especially if you don't have a home charger, because we're on vacation, that you could just pull into at night and plug in and know in the morning you're going to have full charge. And I went into this and I spoke to my wife about it. She's not as into EVs as I am, but I explained to her, hey, I wanted to try this out. She was very supportive. I'm like, but these are the risks. This is what could happen. We could show up, not be able to charge, have a frustrated toddler, and kind of have to work around finding a new charger, letting him out of the car, whatever it may be. And she's like, you know what? It's all good. Let's just try it. And so there's going to be more friction. We knew that versus a gas car where we could just pull in anywhere we wanted to. If we even had to stop for gas on the drive between Madrid and Valencia, we'd be there for 3-5 minutes and off we would go. But we knew we were going to have to stop with him. We would figure out if there were any issues, we would just figure it out. We were going to be very loose and relaxed about it, and it was going to be okay. But I wanted to make sure that I did my research in advance, just give us the best possibility to lessen the amount of friction as possible. So yes, this was at a time, but it's something that I enjoyed. It's something I wanted to do, and so it didn't really add any stress or workload for the trip for me personally. So how we broke up the trip, like I said before, we left from Madrid on the second morning, and we drove about an hour and a half. And I had pre-planned a stop where there were two chargers. There was a Winia and a Zunder. And from everything I saw in advance, both companies seemed to be fairly reliable. At a better route planner, it looked like it was going to be pretty reliable charging situation there. And they were fast chargers. So it was 250 kilowatt charging at the Zunder, and I think it was about 150 at the Winia. Now at this point, again, because I picked up the car without knowing what I was getting, I wasn't 100% sure of the charging capabilities of the car itself, but I felt comfortable knowing at 150, 250, we're going to get the full charging capabilities out of this car, and it was going to be okay. So I'm going to pause here, and let's jump into our first charging stop in Zunder. And I apologize, I recorded this first stop in vertical mode. After that, they should all be in horizontal. So we're at the Zunder charging station at Onrubia, I believe is the name of the town we're in. And there's a Zunder behind me, and I'll show you the car plugged in and everything. There's also a Winia just down across the parking lot and a regular gas station. So for whatever reason, if you had issues at this one, you could literally, I could walk 100 feet and be at the Winia and charge there. It looks like there's actually some people charging there right now. But I wanted to try the Zunder because what I saw online, and this is from a Canadian perspective, is that it's very easy to plug in, use your credit card and charge. Sometimes using your credit card at these machines, from what I've been able to see, is the most expensive way of doing it. But I don't own an electric car. It's a very mild expense for me for our trip here in Spain. So I decided, let's go with the easy route. I do have a bunch of apps downloaded, but I haven't put my credit card in any of them yet because I wanted to see how easy this was. But let me take you through the Zunder. So as you can see here, really wide open. I love the cover here. It's not hot out, but in the sun, it's quite warm. So this allows the cabin to be a little bit cooler while we're waiting and hopefully keep it a little bit cooler when we get going. But I just pulled in, the Google Maps took me right here. I believe the in-car navigation would have as well. But the Winia is the one that it wanted me to go to. So I plugged that in to see if it would do any sort of preconditioning. I don't think it did. So I just picked the Zunder again because I want to see how easy it would be. So just tap my card and charge. So I pulled in, everything is very well laid out here, very easy to tell where to go. The screen is on this side, and I'll go here. So all I did, very simple, I walked up to this screen here. It had a language button up here. I tapped it, it was in Spanish, obviously we're in Spain. I tapped it to change it to English. Then it asked me for a credit card. I inserted my Amex at the bottom. It asked me to allow it to spend up to 50 euros. 50 euros would actually be quite a lot. The rate it said on the screen, I believe, is about 52 cents per kilowatt hour. So I initialized at the 50 euros. It said accepted. Then it said to plug the charger into the vehicle. Or actually, sorry, it asked me which number. So I was number 4, so I selected 4 on the screen. Then it asked me to plug it in. In there, in the infotainment, was a charging screen, which is on right now. You can't really see because of the reflection, but there was an option, as long as the car is on and in park, for you to open the flap. Not too dissimilar to a gas car, which is usually some sort of manual button along the side. This one was on the dash itself in the infotainment. So that opened this. Then in here, you have 2 little toggles right there. You toggle this and this, which opens the flap. Then you pull this out, plug it in, and it began, I could hear it click. It clicked there, then it clicked in the machine, and then it was initializing is what it said on here and on here. And then within I'd say about 20 seconds, it started charging. In terms of charging speed, that's what this is right here. This is a 250 kilowatt station. They're all 250. There's no one else here, so it's not sharing the load across another car. I think this is limited by the car itself. Again, in the infotainment, it was telling me the maximum allowable DC charging when I started at about 90% was 30 kilowatts. And as I was driving, that kept creeping up, I believe because the battery capacity is coming down, but probably also because the battery was getting a little bit warmer. I didn't drive too hard. We did about 110, 115 pretty much the whole way. It's about 18 degrees outside, so the battery was, I don't know, it wouldn't have been heated enough to take full advantage of the speed, I believe. And so this is roughly what it said in the car was maximum 70, and we're getting about that right now. So the screen on the charger there did cut off the stats, so I'm just going to quickly go through them right now. So I pulled in, I believe, somewhere in the 40s of range, which again for us was for the first EV and our first stop. We didn't want to cut it too low, and between Madrid and Valencia, there are several chargers, but there are no major towns. Like there are big gaps between chargers, and if you had an issue in one town, you might struggle finding another one. So we're like, you know what? Hour and a half is perfect. 40% is comfortable for us. So we stopped with around 40 to 45. Sorry, here we go. We started with 51%. We charged to 92%. 30 kilowatt hours were dispensed, and it took about 32 minutes. And I touch on this in the video, but it's something I learned throughout the course of the trip, that this car doesn't really precondition. Like on multiple occasions, I tried to use the Mercedes infotainment to navigate, which is terrible. I'm going to put that out there right now. It's awful. It's not at all easy to find points of interest without like an address. It was terrible. So I ended up using Apple CarPlay for the majority of the trip. And the times I was able to actually select a charging station, it didn't precondition. I don't know why. I'm not familiar with this car, so I'm not really sure what the deal is with that, but it never preconditioned. But anyways, 30 kilowatt hours were dispensed, going from 51% to 92%. I probably could have stopped at 80, but we were doing stuff, so it was okay. And I wanted to have the buffer because we had a pretty long stretch after this. Okay, so fast forward now a few days, and we're now wanting to go from Valencia up to Peñíscola, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours from memory, north of Valencia along the coast. And at this point, we had about 40% charge. So I felt comfortable that we could get out of the city, find a charger en route, and then get us there and get us back. Now, this is a bit trickier because what I was learning is a lot of the charging companies in Spain require you to register on their app. And to register on the app, you have to have a Spanish phone number. Now, we didn't have a Spanish phone number. We had SIM cards that gave us data, but we didn't have a phone number. So when it sends you that authentication text message with the code that all these apps have, we couldn't get anything. So this made it tricky where we couldn't use the app to pre-authorize charging and to pay for charging. And we had to basically rely on chargers that we knew would be able to use credit cards. This is tricky. Now, Google Maps is great. A better route planner is great. If people post pictures, you can kind of zoom in and see what's going on. In the absence of that, you're kind of stuck hoping or using Google or ChatGPT or Gemini to figure out which of these companies, which of these chargers leverage credit cards. Now, I knew the Zunder one would have, just based on some prior research, but I was having some difficulties finding out if the ones along the way to Peñíscola would have that same ability. And there was no Zunder that we could use, so I was using a different company. The first stop we made was in this tiny town. It was like next to this little cafe. It was full of people on bicycles. It was like a road bicycle that'll stop and chat. And I pulled in, and immediately I knew that it wasn't going to work. But I pulled in, got out of the car, and there was no credit card tap. There was an RFID spot where you needed an actual physical card, or I believe you could have downloaded the app, but I think this one, it was an older machine that required an actual physical RFID card that you had to like order in advance, keep in your car or whatever. So this one was a fail. So from there, I plugged in an Iberfola station that would have been just off the highway on the way up to Peñíscola, and it's one of the biggest charging companies in this part of Spain. But again, I saw a lot of things online that made it a little bit dicey, but I'm like, hey, we got to try it. I got to charge. Let's give it a go. On the way there, I saw, you have the gas station symbol. It's kind of like the universal symbol for gas station. And underneath it was a green one with a little charger instead of like the gas pump on the side of it. I'm like, okay, why not? Let's try it. It's right off the highway. Let's give it a go. Turns out it was a power dot, and I'd seen online that power dot was maybe hit or miss, but they had a lot of their newer chargers had a place where you could just use your credit card and tap to initialize the charging. So we pulled in, I found the charger. Again, it was empty, much like the Zunder. Pulled up, and there were two or three different spots, and one of them accepted credit cards. Pull the car in, tap the credit card, off we went. So I'll take you through that in the next video here. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. So everything starts in the car. In there, in the charging menu, there is a button to tap that opens the flap, which opens this here. Then I walked up to the Power Dot charging brains, if you want to call that, the charging station here. And there's our son there. And on this little menu here, you could change it from Spanish to English. So I did that first. Then it says to plug in. So you simply remove the charging, this thing, from the side of the machine there. You click on these two tabs here and here to release this, plug in. Then it said, how do you want to pay? You want to pay with card or you want to pay with an RFID? And again, this would be the RFID tap here that a lot of these machines tend to have for their particular companies. We obviously don't have one, so I just tapped my Amex first. It went for about 10 seconds and said, decline, call your bank. Then I tried our MasterCard and that worked immediately. Then it switched from authorizing to starting session. I heard a click here, I heard a click here, and within a few seconds, it started to authenticate and started to charge. It then brought up a QR code that I could scan, which opened up on my phone for me to monitor the charging session. So in there, it gave me a rate of charge, it gave me how much I've spent so far in euros, and it also gave me how many kilowatts have been delivered. So far, it's gonna be a little bit hard to see, but we started at 44%, I believe, and we're up to 45%. And we are charging at 78 kilowatts, and so far we've delivered 62 kilometers of range. Our plan here, because it's working so well, and I know for a lot of folks in the charging world, or the EV world, that 77 kilowatts isn't particularly fast. And that's true. I think a lot of cars these days, the Teslas, the Ioniq 5, the more powerful battery type vehicles can pull 130, 150, 200 kilowatts. And I think this car is capable of 150 if all the parameters are dialed in. So for us, 80 kilowatts or 75 kilowatts, whatever, is good enough. He wanted to get out of the car anyways. There's a little park over here. We can use the washer. We can grab some snacks. We'll hang out for half an hour, get the car up to probably about 90, which will get us to Peñascola, back to Valencia, and then back on our way to Madrid tomorrow, where we can stop again on a Zunder or something like that when he needs a break. So for us, this works. So far, so good. I will show you how the disconnect works when we're at 90%. So here are the stats from that charge. We started at, what did I say, 44, I believe is what it was. We charged to 93%. This one was slow. It took 37 minutes. And we delivered 38.8 kilowatt hours. Yeah, it wasn't quick. Now, again, we were perfectly comfortable hanging out there. This is actually one of the few places that had a park. Actually, it was the only one we stopped at that had a park. So our son was playing on the slide and the swing, and we wanted to get up anyways. We popped into the gas station, grabbed some snacks. It was totally cool. 37 minutes, probably a hair longer than we wanted to be there, but it was okay. 93% exactly what we wanted to be able to do. And it cost us 22 euros and 50 cents. And I didn't mention this on the first stop. They're both about the same. So this was 58, I did mention it was 58 cents per kilowatt hour. So 22 euros. Again, I haven't really thought about how efficient this is, but that seems to be pretty good to me, considering how much we drove the car, how many kilometers we drove the car. Maybe at the end of this video, I'll provide the overall charging cost and distance traveled, and we'll figure out what that cost per kilometer would have been, and compare it to maybe what my 2019 RAV4 Hybrid would have done. But all in all, successful charging session. Being able to tap with your credit card is perfect. And I mentioned it in there. The Amex on this one didn't work. I believe it did work on the Zunder, but did not work on the Power Dot. But the MasterCard worked no problem. So it's probably best, if you are going to be using credit card, have a MasterCard or a Visa on hand. They tend to be the most reliable globally. If you want to be able to make sure you're safe, or if you have a card that you prefer, use that if you can, but have a Visa and a MasterCard on hand just in case. Charging stop number 3 was relatively uneventful, so now we're on the west side of Valencia heading back towards Madrid. This was another Zunder charging station. Again, I really wanted to stick with that reliability. This was a 90 kilowatt, so it was an older charging station as opposed to the 250 we had on our first stop. But again, relatively uneventful. We were able to walk up and tap, and I'll show you how it worked here. So this one, again, not quite as modern. I believe the other one was a 200 kilowatt. This is a 90 kilowatt. And there's another one behind me over here. So it does have the older CHAdeMO as well as the CCS2, which we're using. And again, very, very simple. You walk up to the screen, you can pick your language up here. You can select start charging there for a light vehicle, which we're obviously what we're in. You tap with your credit card, then you plug it into the car, and it starts charging. Now this one's not particularly fast. The screen's turned off here. There we go. We're only charging, oh, it looks like it did stop. I'm not sure why, maybe I did that. Okay, anyways, I had to stop anyways, but it was about 50 kilowatts. For the most of the charges, are close to 60. Not particularly fast. We came in about 38%, now we're up to 82. But I click OK here, should be able to release it now from the car. Yep, we're no longer charging. Unlock there, press this to make sure, yep. Pull out there, and we plug in here. So far, charging rates have been pretty consistent around that 55 to 60 cents, euro cents per kilowatt hour. And pretty happy with the charging session here. And here are the stats from this stop. So because it was a 90 kilowatt and we only drove for about 15-20 minutes from our Airbnb to this stop, wasn't ideal for charging, but we delivered 34 kilowatt hours in about 35 minutes. So on average, it's about 60 kilowatts. Wasn't very fast. We did charge to about 90% when I came in, pulled out. This one was actually a pretty good location. So there was a gas station there, but also a full-on restaurant and convenience store. So we actually had breakfast there, got some snacks, used the washroom. It was actually a really nice place to stop, but a very slow charger. Now, I didn't log charger number 4. Charger number 4 was the same as charger number 1. So we went back to that first Zunder location because it was, again, on our way back towards Madrid. I knew it was going to be reliable, so we stopped there for charge stop number 4. Charge number 4 and our final charge of the trip was on the east side of Madrid. So at this point, we made it from Valencia at that Zunder stop through the vineyard all the way to Madrid at this point. And the rule from the airport pickup was that you had to be in the car with at least 80% charge. So I wanted to get just over 90%. This would give me a little bit of buffer for us to get to our Airbnb, the grocery store, and then to the airport in the morning without having to stress, driving really, really slowly to make sure we got there at 80%. And we did end up making it there. I think we had like 87. Like it was really, really comfortable. So this is another 250 kilowatt Zunder. This particular location, it seems to that it was being used by a local, it was a rideshare company. So they had, I want to say 12 to 16 different bays. Really, really nice location, a really, really nice charging facility in a terrible location unless you want to sit in your car. So not great for us. There was nothing around. It was totally industrial. I didn't know that when we pulled up, of course, but that's kind of just how it goes. So again, pulled up. I'll show you in the video, but pulled up, really, really simple. Tap your card, off you go. And this one we were lucky. We were able to get slightly faster charging because we were driving for such a long time and the battery was depleted. I think it was actually quite warm, which was good. But the charging stats here, 38 kilowatt hours delivered. So this was definitely our longest charge, 40 to 90%, and it took about 35 minutes. I would recommend this spot if you're okay with just chilling in your car. I would not recommend this spot if you want a place to eat, use the bathroom, walk around. But very reliable, tons of bays. Walk in, tap your card, and no problem, you're charging. All right, and here are the final stats from this trip. So charging stop number 1 was that first Zunder. It was $28 Canadian. These are all Canadian dollars. The second stop was at that power dot. That was $37.83. That was the most. That was the longest charge, and I believe it also had the highest rate. Charging stop number 3 was $31.29. Charging stop number 4, again back to that first Zunder spot, was $37.39. And the final stop was $35 for a total of $170. Now, I don't have the exact distance I traveled, but I went back through Google Maps and kind of picked all the areas that we went to and kind of got a rough estimate. I think we drove about 1,100 kilometers, which works out to be about 15 cents per kilometer. Now, I drive a 2019 RAV4 hybrid here in Canada. And in the summer times, I can usually get around 6 liters per 100 kilometers. But that is a mixture of city and highway. If I'm just driving on the highway, it's probably closer to about 7. And in the winter, that can get up to about 7.88. So I use 7 because we were doing predominantly highway driving in Spain. So if we average 7 liters per 100 kilometer, at the gas was, I think the conversion ended up being $2.45 Canadian per liter. Here we pay about $1.30 Canadian, but out there with the conversion, it worked out to be $2.45. And that works out to be $188.65. So actually about $19 more for a hybrid versus versus the EV. And when you think about that, it really does speak to how good hybrids are and maybe how little they're talked about. A lot of people seem to be on either side of the fence. You're either full on EV or you're full on gas. But hybrids are kind of the best solution where there's no range anxiety. You can pull into any gas station. You're there for 3 minutes. And it only cost me about $19 more. And that's in a country that has pretty expensive gas prices compared to, say, for example, Canada. So if we were to use a typical fully gas SUV, I estimate from what I've seen online, that's about 10 liters per 100 kilometer. So about 3 liters more per 100 kilometer than my RAV4 hybrid. And that really gets the price up. That would be $270 in gas, so $100 more than the EV. So if you're talking full EV, this is a kind of a mid-size hatchback versus a full-size SUV, you're saving $100 in doing just DC fast charging. If you had a level 2 at home, it's obviously going to be a lot cheaper, but just DC fast charging, it was $100 cheaper to use the EV. So what does this mean? You know, this is my first time driving an EV. I've been in EVs before. One of my best friends has a Tesla Model Y, so I have some experience in being in the vehicle, but actually planning my own trip, doing my own DC fast charging, having to deal with potentially unreliable charging in another country where didn't know if they were going to have credit card readers. I didn't have the apps on my phone. It was pretty good. We only really had the one place that we couldn't charge. And yes, I did spend countless hours doing research, but that was more because I kind of enjoyed that and I wanted to really immerse myself in that experience. If you were just showing up sight unseen, picking up the car and doing it yourself, you would have likely had more challenges than I did because I did that research ahead of time. But if you were from Spain and you could download the apps and you could get the authentication codes, you could have basically used any single charger along the way. Yes, it would have taken a little bit of time to sit there and put all your credit card information into all these apps, but it would have worked. And once you did it once, then you would have been good to go for that same, that same charging network throughout the rest of your trip. I would highly recommend using Zunder. We had no issues in any of the Zunder locations that we used. The Power Dot, again, as long as you get one of the newer machines, is also pretty good, especially if you're a foreigner. Would I rent an electric car again in a foreign country? I absolutely would. I would do my research ahead of time to make sure that the charging infrastructure is actually going to be relatively smooth, but I would absolutely rent an EV, and it kind of solidified for myself and my wife that we could totally live with an EV here. We do most of our charging at home, charge DC fast charging when we need to. We do have CCS chargers and superchargers kind of along the corridor where we live, where we do most of our driving. So for us, this solidified that we would love to drive an EV. But for anyone looking to rent an EV in Spain, especially if you're going to be going between Madrid and Valencia, it's absolutely doable. Again, just do a little bit of research. Be prepared to maybe have to download a couple of apps. If I had to do it again, I'd probably get a SIM card with a number just in case, but it worked without it and it was relatively smooth going. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Thanks and have a good one. Peace.